I have never done a presentation in a room like this before, so excuse me, I'm like so confused. But thank you for joining. I am thrilled to be here talking about a topic that we're all immersed in right now. And I am really see this as an important moment. I want to start with a story, just to ground us. Before work was organized into offices and factories, we had guilds. And the guilds were the organizing concept for work for about 6 centuries. And they were like the central nervous system of the economies of Europe for all that time. What were they? Okay, so you may have heard people belonged to crafts. And they worked in the workshops, or we might call them the studios, of masters. And there would be apprentices and journeymen, the apprentices learning the craft or the trade, and the journeymen passing into different workshops, learning different techniques before they opened up their own shops as masters. They had agency. They had a sense of professional identity. They had pride in what they did because they were responsible for their output, right? For the thing that they were making, whatever it was. And then along came the Industrial Revolution. And what did we get there? They moved out of the workshops into the factories. But the interesting thing was, work didn't change a whole lot. They still worked in teams. They still built something from beginning to end. The only difference was they had better technology, better tools, so they could do things faster, more accurately, but they still set their own pace. They still had a sense of agency. Some people did things differently than others, and that was okay. They had their own techniques. And they basically got a lot of the return on the investment personally because they had more free time. So then, unfortunately, there was a stall in productivity. And so the owners of the factories were getting a little concerned. We've invested in all this electricity. Why aren't we getting our ROI? And so they brought in this guy. Let me bring him up. Here he is, Frederick Winslow Taylor. Anyone heard of him? Yes, a few people. So Frederick Winslow Taylor was an engineer. And he came in with what he called the scientific management, new way of thinking about work. And he did time and motion studies. And the time and motion studies enabled him to say that, oh, well, we need standardization. And we can, if we just broke every single job into the minutest little pieces, then we'll get higher productivity because the same person will be doing the same motion over and over and over again. And that's how we got the assembly line, right? What happened, though, to that sense of agency? What happened to that sense of pride? What happened to that sense of ownership and identity? And the guilds, they disappeared. Those beautiful, magnificent buildings that we see in the Brussels Grand Place or in Ghent, the home of TechWolf, those were the places where they used to gather and derive their sense of social involvement because it was everyone in the trades. Now it became what? The union, right? That was where they got their identity because they were no longer master craftsmen. They were now assembly workers working for someone else. So that's the picture that I want to leave you with as we talk about the moment we're in today. And why does it matter? Well, we could end up looking a little like this. This shift that's happening in white-collar work. And that is the issue. That's what I would call the Frederick Winslow Taylor moment for us, is what are we going to do about that? Are we going to apply time and motion studies, looking at tasks and automating them, and then whatever is left behind is what the humans end up doing? Or are we going to design intentionally how work is going to look, right? So, you know, we are in the first phase. The first phase is actually quite nice, as it was for those guild workers when they moved into the factory. Work augmentation is quite good. You know, you get a lot of the benefit of the AI, right? You get more free time, less of the tedious work, more of the joyful work. It's actually quite nice because we haven't changed how we work yet. But we can see the changes on the horizon, right? We're seeing it in the headlines every day. Whether it's McKinsey, saying we're no longer going to be hiring entry-level workers, whether it's UPS replacing 43,000 of their people over 3 years, doing things like pricing and sales operations, or whether it's MSN who is replacing their journalists with AI. Or in the case of creativity, AI is quite good at creative stuff. Better than the average, not as good as the above average, is what we found from the studies. So the question is that okay? Is that where we want to go? So the biggest issue that we're facing right now is the entry-level worker. That's what's being affected right now. And we're already seeing, for example, that the number of postings for entry-level jobs in the United States today is 50% less than it was in 2019. Think about that for a minute. Think about all the learning that entry-level workers are getting when they get into those jobs. It's not just that they learn how to do accounting better, it's that they develop an intrinsic understanding of how organizations work, how to work together. They have an understanding of context that they develop in that entry-level work, right? Not only that, but many of us hire these accountants, these consultants, these people who came from those firms into our middle ranks as well. That pool is going to disappear. So this is an issue that is right in front of us today, and we have an ability to design so that we can manage this. But it will take will and a conviction on our parts. So before I go any further, I want to do a quick study. Who's in the room? How many people here in HR? Okay, most of us, all right. And what about IT? A few, great, okay. Any other? Okay, IT or HR, good. So we know who we're here. And these are the people who are going to solve it. So you're probably saying to yourself, okay, these jobs are disappearing, but new jobs are being created, right? And that's fine, that's true. Let's look at the new jobs. For example, Carlyle, a big investment house, decided to take 90% of their entry-level hires and get them to be auditors of the AI that was doing the work that the entry levels used to do. So you get the AI auditor. You got people training the AI, right? Coming in and training it to be better. You've got the performance analyst, how's it doing? You've got the annotator or the labeler for the data. You've got the ethics and compliance or the prompt engineer. Lots have been made of prompt engineering. What do all these jobs have in common? Any thoughts? What do they have in common? AI, okay, what else? What else is this professional mastery? No, this is babysitting. This is AI babysitting. This is not growing your professional mastery. I didn't go to journalism school, accounting school, law school, whatever, to do this, because it could be a dead-end job, right? Okay. So, ready for your next course, sir? We are serving AI, if that's what we think are the new jobs, right? And there's issues not just for the employee, but also for the company. I'm on the board of several companies. These are huge risk issues. What happens in the case of an emergency, a catastrophe, when the lights go out and the electricity is down? Who's going to have the skill, the judgment, the capability to rise to the occasion if they've been relying so heavily on AI? If they didn't have that in the trenches experience to know where to look, where the problem might be, right? These are issues on the minds of boards right now. You get skills atrophy. We've all experienced that using GPS, right? How we can't even find our way to the grocery store. But it's more important when you look at it from the standpoint of a business. And then, is it a career dead end? And what does that mean in terms of engagement of your people? All right, so these are the issues both for the employee and for the company or the organization. So where do we go from here? We're at a turning point right now. We could go in either direction. We could go into that dystopian world that I just described, where people are feeling stripped of their agency, stripped of their professionalism, not engaged, and so forth. Or we could go into a world where we leverage AI, one we've talked a lot about in the last couple of days, leverage AI to empower people to do their best work with skills mastery, with competence, with creativity, so they can make the biggest impact they can on the organization where they work. But it's a choice, and that choice is going to come from how we design work. Okay, so where do we start? We start with foundational knowledge about how AI can work in our organization. There's some very good tools out there, TechWolf being one. I'm on their board. I'm very proud of what they've done, which is to analyze for every job out there what parts of them can be automated or using AI to leverage results. So that's number one. That's foundational. You need to know that. The second part of it is actually what skills are people using on the job? Usually, for professionals, no two professionals do the same job the same way, right? Kind of like those guild workers. Some of them have specific skills that may not show up in a job description, but are really important. That also gets picked up, another product of TechWolf, looking at inferencing skills based on their digital footprint. Once you know that, you've got the, okay, what's the magic that happens because of people's unique skills, and you've got the, what are the tasks that this job requires? So you've got a backdrop for design, okay? These are two really important fundamental points of what we need to do. But on top of that, as HR professionals, we need to be thinking about the talent strategy. If entry-level jobs are going away, where are we going to get our future leadership from? Right? And there are other issues, so let's explore them. So first of all, what is the purpose of AI in our organization? We need to have a really solid understanding of that. And yes, there is a case for reducing labor costs, but actually what most companies have found now is that's actually the lowest value. More can be found out of scaling, out of finding higher purpose work for people to be doing, out of accelerating time to value, even as an example, reducing burnout, right? So one company that I know, customer service, high levels of burnout and turnover. Why? Because a lot of customers yell at them. Okay, they have that problem to deal with. But it turns out that AI handles angry customers better than customer service reps. Why? Because they don't take it personally. They know how to de-escalate without taking it personally. No matter how much training you do for someone not to, take it personally, when they're being yelled at, other things happen emotionally, right? So great. So they use it as a way to reduce burnout and therefore lower turnover. But it's that kind of thinking based on that foundational knowledge that I talked about earlier that enabled them to get there, okay? So what is the purpose of the AI worker? The second one, we talked about entry level. Do we need entry level? Why? If we don't have it, how are we going to substitute that labor pool? Are we going to rent people in the form of contractors? How's that going to work out? Are we going to import from certain areas, or are we going to develop them ourselves? That's an important basic talent strategy that we all have. We need to rethink it, right? We also need to think about the manager. What is the role of the manager in the world of AI? I've seen articles that say we don't need managers anymore. All the work can be managed by AI. And companies are doing that in the software company, in this area, right? So, okay, maybe we think the future of the manager is gone, or maybe we go, well, there's another role for the manager, which has more to do with connecting to that individual, having their back, whatever, right? You decide. Why do we need managers? Helping them with their careers. Maybe they don't need to be as involved in the tasks But maybe they do. Maybe that's important. But we need to, as a company, decide what is the role of the manager, do we need them? The next one, middle management. Again, there are people out there saying, we don't need middle managers anymore. Yeah, every time you open the media, you'll see there's a company that's getting rid of their middle managers. Why? Because, hey, AI can filter the data, scan the data, pull it together in a very nice PowerPoint presentation, and take it to top management. Okay, why do we need middle management? Or, oh, maybe there's another reason we have middle managers. Maybe it's to provide strategic context, right? Maybe it's to connect the dots between different businesses. But we need to have a purpose. Otherwise, whoop, they disappear, right? So we need to have a set of principles around design that's going to guide what we do. And talking about principles, governance. So when I was at IBM, we introduced, I was lucky we had Watson AI in 2015. One of the first things we realized was just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because AI is capable of doing this doesn't mean we should do this. And we developed a code of ethics that we published and we shared with all of our employees very transparently about how we were going to use AI. But you need to think about, like for example, in IBM, we said AI will never make decisions. It'll give advice, it'll recommend, whatever, it will never make decisions. That was one of the guardrails. But as a company, you need to come up with that, right? Because that's going to help you organize your future architecture of work, right? So, that brings me to a question that I've been struggling a lot with, and that is, what's our methodology? What's our methodology? When was the last time HR got involved in serious work design? And it takes me back to when I was in my 20s, and I worked for Shell, and Shell was doing something called socio-technical systems design. And funnily enough, I applied that in the work that I did in AI, in HR at IBM, because that's all we had, right? None of my people had those experiences. Job design, work design just hadn't been part of what we've been doing, but we need it now. So let me just talk a little bit. In this case, I was designing you'll see in the tundra of Alberta, a gas plant and how work was going to be organized using socio-technical systems design, way over my head, but I tried. But let me just talk about the principles of socio-technical systems design because I think they apply today. One, socio-technical is social and technical, bringing them together and optimizing those two things, right? So how are we going to optimize, not just for technology, but for both, right? The second one is, look at whole tasks. Don't divide them up into minute little things that aren't meaningful to anybody. Look at the whole task. And oh, by the way, the whole task usually involves other units, not just one function. That we found over and over again at IBM. Even payroll, turns out they're at the coalface of everything, all the design changes being made and benefits. We have some benefits people here, in tax, in accounting, and so forth. And they're discovering issues. And if they don't have the analytical capability to look at patterns, they're resolving them over and over and over again instead of resolving them by going to benefits, going to tax and whatever and saying, hey, you guys missed this, right? So that's what we found that was the ROI for us, was that there was a better connection. You're seeing that all over the place. P&G did that when they looked at research and they realized that actually the big benefit of AI was they were now better connected with the commercial side of the business. And the R&D brought them together, higher levels of technical understanding in sales, higher levels of understanding what is commercially sustainable in R&D. And they started having better discussions, better ideas percolating because they were on the same platform utilizing AI. So I encourage you to think about beyond a function. Go beyond it, look at the business benefit. And then finally, participation, probably the most important, and that is the people who know the work best are the people who do the work. So while we might have done re-engineering from top down, big mistake with AI. Big mistake. You'll miss out on all the important information I talked about earlier in terms of how work is getting done and where the issues are, where the bottlenecks are. You need to involve the people and you need to be transparent about what you're after, otherwise there's a lot of fear, right? But certainly at IBM, we found that worked the best, and they ended up being the evangelists for others in the organization. So back to socio-technical systems design, the best example that I know of is at Volvo. And there they decided instead of the assembly line, what they would do is have a team make a whole car. Everything from the rolled steel that was coming off into the factory to putting the hubcaps on, right? They had one car, they were accountable for that car. They were proud of that car, they saw it rolling off, that's our team's car, right? That was a huge success, but it never got scaled. But as I say, I think there are some very good learnings from that era of socio-technical systems design that we can be using today. So we're finding ourselves now at a point where we've got a choice. We can go down one route, the dystopian route, or we can go down a route of intentional design. And that, I think, is the moment for us. It's our Frederick Taylor moment. And so I would encourage you, as you think about where we are in each of our companies, we could be on a train that's going to go off the tracks. And it's up to us to jump into the conductor seat and actually steer that train. And that's where we need to go. And I think in partnership with the tool companies like TechWolf, that we can figure out what it is that we need to do and avoid stripping the meaning and purpose of work that so makes people want to come to work every day, right? And so that I think is our challenge. So when history looks back at this moment, what will they say? What will they say about how we rose to this challenge? And it is my true belief that they will say HR saw it, they stood up, they led, and they did it right. And I know you can do it. Thank you.